Hello everyone, and welcome to another video in our series of open source on IBM. Today we'll be talking about installing Node.js, setting up Node-Red, and creating our first flow, and we'll see where we go after that. I did want to preface this video by saying that I plan on kind of doing this a little bit on the fly. I have some notes. I'll show you some places that we'll go to get information on how to set this up, but I haven't prepped this environment and kind of wanted to step through it, and we may encounter some issues, and that way you would see kind of some of the things that you may encounter and you'd have to work through as well. So let's jump right in. Okay, so first thing I'm going to pull up here is, and let me go back a little bit. So IBMI has a Git repository with a bunch of examples out there. So if you go github.com, you can see all of these. So we want to look at the Node.js ones that they have. And then if you come down here, you can look at Node-Red. So, and then their README gives us some information. So in order to install Node-Red, we're going to have 5770 SS1 option 33 and 5733 SC1 option 1. Now these you should already have, as well as the yum environment if you watched my last video. If you haven't, I suggest or recommend you go back and watch that one. That'll help you at least getting the yum environment set up. If you need to install these two license program options, you'll just have to do that through go license pigum and select these options and find the media and install, insert the media or create the image catalog in order to do that. If anyone's interested in how to do that process, I can create a video on that as well. But we already have our yum environment set up, so we're going to install Node. I'm actually going to install Node.js 12, and we are going to probably just skip GCC, and then we'll come down here to this npm install. Okay, so I'm going to open git bash here. Make my console a little bit bigger. Okay, so first thing I'm going to connect to my system. So my user is MATTDEV, and the IP to my system is this. Okay, so here we can see I'm connected to my system. I will show you there's another way that we could do some of this. So if you go to the ACS Client Tools Open Source Package Management, if you haven't installed that, it'll prompt you to install the environment, and it'll set up a bunch of different pieces for you. I do have SSH enabled, so I'm going to type in my user. Okay, so these are pretty much most of the packages that get installed when you set up the environment. I could come over here to available packages and select Node.js 12. And actually, why don't we just go ahead and do that? I'll show you that. Another way to do it would be yum install Node.js 12, but we'll just install it from here. Click install. It's going to prompt yes. Just wait for this to go. Okay, we can see now that it's complete. So if I close out of this, and I come back over here, under installed packages, we go down. Oh, I have to refresh, sorry about that. Okay, now we see Node.js 12. Okay, so that's installed, so that's good. Now we're back at our SSH client. Okay, so one of the things that we have to address here, so if I was to try to run this, it's going to go out, try to retrieve it. Okay, you see it did add 314 packages, but if I was to go ahead and try to kick off for Node-Red, you see it says command not found. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to add our path into our SSH session. So in this case, I can copy this, paste it in here. Okay, and if I just change that command to point to node 12, you can see that it executed Node.js and it's starting Node-Red on the server. So if I come over here, see, and the port was 1880, sorry. Okay, let this load up, and here we go. So we have Node-Red running on our server, and we can create our first flow. Now if we wanted to see what front end looked like, which there won't be anything up here right now, we could type UI, but I'd have to type it correctly. Okay, I did type it correctly, but because we don't have a flow built yet, that's why it's doing that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our flow. Well, actually, let's go back to the OSS example. Okay, so they have this nice flow here for us. So if we go up here to this flow.json, we can actually copy all of this code here. Okay, and so basically all that JSON is for what you see right here. So when I come over to Node-Red and I do import, I can select a new flow or my current flow. Since I only have one flow, I'm just going to do current. And then I basically just paste the JSON in there, hit import. Okay, and see, we're going to get these errors here. And the reason we got those errors is because we don't have some of the pieces that we need in order for this to show up properly. So if we go back over to the notes from the folks at IBM, we're going to need this Node-Red DB2 node and this Node-Red dashboard. Okay, so we come back over to Node, and then we go to Manage Palette, and you can see that these are the ones that are installed right now. So if I go install Node-Red dashboard, so we could actually just copy. Okay, and then we're just going to click install. Just asking you if you want to, yes. Okay, and then this right here, this Node-Red contrib db2 for I, this is actually what allows us to make this database connection so that we can query db2 tables and display that data to a table. All right, so I'm going to also install this. Okay, and so that installed that. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you here. Okay, so we can see that these are all the pieces that were in this right here. Short of a few, they only have one system and this one has two, but basically the same. Okay, so we have this let's just see what this does. Actually, let's just see what it does. So let's deploy it. Refresh our UI. Okay, so we can see it created a local sys view with our tables, but there's no data showing up. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to come back over here, and the data is not showing up because we actually didn't give the database node a valid set of credentials in order for it to connect. So what you're going to do is you double click right here on this local DB, and then in here you can see it has a list of different options. So what we can do is we can just hit the pencil on it. We can say localhost, we could give it a connection. We're going to do MATTDEV. Okay, and then the password is going to be put in. So, and then we can just leave it as start local because the machine that we're connecting to is running on that local machine. We click update and done. All right, let's hit deploy. Okay, I clicked this to inject it, but you have to deploy it first in order for the update to take effect. So now you can see we're connected to local host, and if we come over here, voila, we have all of our charts, and we have the data that was queried, and it's showing up here in our dashboard. So as you can see, pretty simple. If we come into this ASP usage injection node, you can drag it over here. You can see basically all it's doing is doing a select statement from one of the IBM services tables that Scott Forstein and his team have put together. And it's basically just refining that data, and it's doing it all in a select to grab it. It's doing a little bit of tweaking to it, and then it makes the call, or this makes the call to get the data, and then this is how it's prepared. So basically, we're setting up a variable, called value, and then we're parsing the integer from the message payload. And the message payload is just what comes out of this when it makes the actual connection and retrieves the data. And then we're saying we want object 0 of the payload, and the name of it is system_ask_use, and we want to return the payload in this value. So basically, with Node-Red, when it returns data, it's going to return it as is the payload. So if we were to come in here and drop some debug nodes and deploy this, and then come over here to this little debug messages view, I'm going to re-inject this, and now you can see if I hover over it, it actually highlights which node I am looking at. So right here, this top one, you can see that when it makes the call to, with the SQL from the database connection, it's returning the system_ASP_used of 7.66. Now when we prepare the data, you saw that it was just parsing that integer into the payload, and so we're just getting 7, and it's just set right now to round that number to a whole number. And then basically this gauge is just dropped in from one of the nodes over here, and we're just saying we want the value format to be the value in in percentage. The units are percentage. You can actually set here your different color gradient and your sectors of when those will be triggered, and you can create, set the size of it and everything like that. And so this is just receives the data, so it basically just receives the payload and then outputs that to our dashboard for us. And you can see here that's where it is, 7%. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how to start Node-Red and have it run in your worked active job, start it from the system itself. So Jesse Gorzinski has this script out here that is a submit job script that I'll be using. There's several different ways you can do this type of stuff, but I'm gonna use this, and we'll just go this route. If you have questions, you want to know some other ways to do it, we can explore those as well. But I do like this script. It does work well, and I've had good success with it. So basically, I'm going to come over here to my system, and I'm going to drill down to my open source library so that I can create this script. Okay, I take that back. I was thinking about it. So I think what we actually will do is we're going to just put it in my home directory. So whatever user executes it, their profile is going to start out in a specific directory. In my case, it starts out in home/MATTDEV. You could put this script somewhere else, or I opened up my Visual Studio and I had my .path file or my .profile. So the reason that I have this .path file is because I installed the IBM dot files, and this is where you would actually make your changes to the different paths that you want set up for your user. So, and what that allows you to do is when you come in, it's already going to know to look in this directory, in this directory, this directory. So for Node, for example, if I wanted to add a path for Node, I could come in here and say, so remember over here, when we executed our node up here, we said QOpenSys packages lib Node.js 12 bin-Node-Red. Well, if I just took this whole path and put that in here, then it's actually going to have that path available to me, so I don't have to do that. So let's just test that out here. So I'm going to quit, or sorry, exit. I'm going to sign back onto my system. Now I should just be able to do Node-Red. Okay, so you can see now I didn't have to qualify it with the path name because I went in here to my path file and I put this in. If you're not using the IBM i.files, you would more than likely use the .profile, and you can edit your path here as well. And to do that, you would actually change it up to look something like this. So it was just path equals this before. Now it's path equals QOpenSys packages lib Node.js 12 bin, and that same other path we had in the path echo or export path. So if you were using the .profile to load your path, that's how you would do that. Okay, so that took care of starting Node without having to qualify our path here. So now you can see it's up and running. If I was to come back over here, sorry about that. You can see the flow works and the UI displays as well. Okay, so going back to creating this file here, so we're just going to come up here and I'm going to create a new file. So I'm just SSH'd into this system as my user, and I'm going to create this file and edit it. I'm just going to copy this code, going to paste it in here. I'm going to save that file. And then I'm going to execute that from my system. Okay, so to do that, let's go back to our bash here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to call that, and we're going to pass in Node-Red. Okay, and you can see here job 001787 was submitted to QBATCH. All right, so let's go check and see if it's out there. Okay. I'm going to get signed in here. If we go work active job. Okay, so we can see here that we got my Node-Red job. If I put a 5 on that, 001787, that's the job. Okay, so I don't have anything running over here anymore. It's all running in just the subsystem as a submitted job. So if I come back over here, you can see that my flow space is still up and running and linked to that. And just to show, so what we can do is we can come in here and do a 41. I'll just end this immediately. See that it's gone. Come back over here. See, now the page is not loaded anymore. I have to come back and submit this again. Now we got a new job, 1799. It's going to take a few seconds to get process fully up and running. And now we're back to having our Node-Red dashboard and flow and UI, everything all accessible. Okay, like I said, I'm just doing this on the fly, so let's go out there and just do something a little additional. Okay, so I want to create a table that shows the subsystems on my system here. So I'm going to go Manage Palette and click Install, and I think it's UI Table. US. Okay, here we go. Dash Table. Yes, I want to install it. Okay, and while that is installing, I'm going to go over here and grab an example of my SQL statement so that I can show you what I'm going to be using as my starting point. Okay, so I'm going to open up Run SQL Scripts. It's going to get connected to my system. Okay, I'm going to just do this for sake of time to show you what I want to accomplish here. Oops, and I think I missed a little part of it. Okay, so let's make sure this works and then I'll explain it. Okay, so basically you can see here my query is returning a title, which is the actual name of our subsystem, a description, an icon, and a status, active or inactive. Okay, so in this SQL statement here, I'm doing two concatenations, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to put this HTML markup in here to make this subsystem description bold. So that you would do that by starting with a B and ending with a /B. And that's as the title, the text description of the subsystem as description. And then I'm basically going to use a case statement. So I'm going to say case when the status equals active, I want it to display this icon, swap underscore horizon. Or when the status is inactive, then this icon, highlight underscore off. And as that's called icon name, and then I want the status. And I'm getting that from qsys2.subsystem_info, and I'm ordering by status and then title. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come back over here. So we've installed our table here. So I'm going to do a new injection. I am going to switch this to, is it message? Sorry, I forgot already. Oh, it's just text. Okay, sorry about that. String. I'm going to paste in our string here. Okay, and this is one of the things I really like about Node-Red also. So you can have it inject after, several milliseconds or a certain amount of time, and then you can have it repeat. So I'm going to actually have this repeat on an interval, and let's say every 15 seconds. So basically when we deploy this and it's running, it's going to inject it as soon as this is loaded, and then every 15 seconds after that it will make that, it'll refresh this data. Okay, so I copied that in. I'm going to copy my database connection, and then I am going to create a new function here. And I already have this written up. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to use that. Oh wait, no, I was wrong. So in this case, because we're dumping it to a table, I'm going to actually just put the table out here. Sorry about that message. Let's see. Okay, so my table, I want it to be under local sys status. So basically this is how it's going to show up. So remember over here it said local sys. So this is just what flow it's going to show up on and where it's actually going to show. I'll highlight that stuff in another video. Okay, and let's do done. Okay, and let's give this a try and see how this looks for us. Okay, so if I come over here and I scroll down, you actually see that I have my table here. But you know what, I don't really like the way that looks. I mean, it is a table and it does display the data, but I wanted this to look a little bit fresher. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the table, I'm actually going to use the list. So in order to do that, I have to install that one, I believe. Yes, because that's not an option. So if I go manage palette again, install UI list, got to install that one as well. Okay, so now we have that. I'm going to dump this table, and I'm going to grab my list over here. I'm going to bring that in. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this again to local sys status. And I believe, oh, now we just want to do the allow HTML in displayed text, and that's going to make that subsystem name bold. And we'll just give it a name. This is only for displaying here. Subsystems, click OK. Let's do deploy again. Come over here and check what we have, and we have nothing. So what did I do wrong? Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Let's see if I inject it, if it shows up. Okay, so I don't know why that didn't like it the first time. I'll go back and see if we can figure it out. Okay, but you can see now this is a little bit different view of it, and now we have our icons. So the arrows going both ways means that it's active. We know the subsystem's QBATCH, and this is the description. And then here's the inactive ones, and then that's the icon that we had selected. And there's a place you can go to figure out what those icons are. I'll probably cover that in another video as well. Okay, so it does say inject immediately and then after every 15 seconds. So I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe let's just see if we refresh again. Okay, it's still there. Let me know if you have any issues with it. You can see if maybe I'm missing something, but it might have just not injected that first time for whatever reason. But that's basically how we would do that. So thanks for joining, and leave some comments and feedback in the video below, and click subscribe. Thanks.